In 2021, Edward Fox surprised followers by criticizing COVID vaccines and lockdowns. However, that was only the start. He made headlines once more in 2025 when he turned down movie roles due to woke script alterations. Then he had to personally refute the death rumors. Laurence Fox, his nephew, lost a significant libel action. $180,000 was paid for unfounded charges. Edward has now revealed Hollywood's greatest secret, one that most performers never publicly acknowledge. Finally, the truth about what actually occurs behind closed doors is emerging. On April 13, 1937, Edward Fox was born in Chelsea, London. His life has been filled with drama, secrets, and family strife since the day he was born. Robin Fox, his father, was a theatrical agent. Had wed Angela Worthington, an actress, in October 1935. However, Robin told Angela something that would torment her just before Edward was born. "I will never be faithful," he declared. He meant it, too. Robin had numerous affairs, including a protracted connection with Rosalind Chateau, who gave birth to a boy named Daniel in 1948. A lot of people thought Robin was the father. And it didn't end there. Princess Marina, Prince George's widow, was the subject of one of Robin's most startling partnerships. It wasn't merely rumors. It gave the already tangled family tale an odd and unsettling royal twist. The well-known dramatist Frederick Lonsdale's daughter was Edward's mother, Angela. But there was a shadow attached to even that. She was not married when she was born. In 1927, her father had established himself as a playwright with plays such as The Lady of Scandal. People were unaware of how intimate his stories were to his own family, though. They were filled with social conflicts, affairs, and lies, all of which Edward was born into. In order to avoid the bombs in London during World War II, Edward's family relocated to Sussex. Seeing bombs fall when he was still a young boy gave him nightmares and influenced his reserved, silent demeanor. He began attending Harrow School at the age of 13 in the early 1950s. He struggled academically. Despite receiving only 3% in maths on his admission exam, he was accepted due to his father's influence. He liked studying German and French, but he didn't like the way drama was taught. He detested the school's emphasis on tradition over originality and thought the acting classes were dull. During Edward's tenure, Winston Churchill even made 2 visits to the institution, although he was unimpressed. Despite not being expelled, he departed early in 1955 because he was fed up with the strict atmosphere. He enlisted in the army for national duty in the same year that he turned 18. Edward served in the military from 1955 to 1957. He didn't succeed in his goal of becoming an officer in the Coldstream Guards. Instead, he enlisted in the Loyalist Regiment. There were later allegations that he was indeed a member of the Coldstream Guards. In any case, his army experience differed greatly from his affluent education. Despite the fact that it went against his artistic nature, he truly relished the discipline. At the age of 20, he began trying out for acting parts after completing his duty. Although he didn't have much aptitude, one director noted that Edward enjoyed giving dramatic remarks in public. Because he wore a loud checkered suit, he once lost his job at Marks & Spencer. Although that position didn't endure, it was another indication that Edward wasn't a part of the mainstream. He enrolled in the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, RADA, in 1958 with the intention of becoming an actor. He was 21. Edward didn't remain long, but several of his classmates, like Albert Finney, would go on to become famous. The school didn't seem to be doing much to assist him. He did enjoy Clifford Turner's voice training, and he continued to use them throughout his career. He began performing in small theaters after leaving RADA in 1959 or 1960. He paid Henry Poole and Collins $47.14 for a striped suit the same year, most likely for an audition. He relocated to Ockenden, a little cottage in Sussex, and continued giving talks to anyone who would listen while strolling about the town. He was learning, but he wasn't yet famous. To make ends meet in the early 1960s, he worked as a waiter in theaters in London. In addition, he worked odd jobs and made an effort to remain in the entertainment industry. Edward silently listened to the incessant talk, learning about the workings of the company. He made a self-promise to never fall into those traps, even if there was never any evidence that he sought anything awful like casting couch situations. He had a brief, uncredited role in the 1962 movie The Mindbenders. He also made an uncredited appearance in The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner later that year. At the time, he was 25, barely making ends meet, but gradually making progress. He also made a journey to Paris that year that would forever alter his life. When Edward traveled to Paris in 1962, he became aware of the French New Wave film trend. He became aware of a whole new genre of cinema after seeing works by François Truffaut and others. It caused him to re-evaluate his career goals as an actor. Even though he continued to work odd jobs and live in poverty, this trip provided him a sense of direction. He took on more roles after returning to London. On February 14, 1963, Edward Fox was given his first significant opportunity. He was merely an understudy for his brother James in the Wyndham's theatre production of The Importance of Being Earnest. He wasn't the star. However, things didn't go as planned. On March 5, during rehearsals, the two brothers got into a heated argument. They got into a heated argument that nearly destroyed the production because Edward didn't like the way James delivered a certain line. Edward's intensity was evident to the director. However, the altercation led to a 2-day standoff. The creator, H.M. Tennant, had to intervene in order to soothe them. On April 20, Edward was able to perform for the first time. Despite all the backstage drama, he received positive reviews for his performance as Algernon. However, things deteriorated. Some agents deemed him unprofessional and declined to collaborate with him as a result of the altercation. He was placed on a blacklist for a brief period of time. He received very little notice by the time the play concluded on May 15, but it was enough to keep him going. Edward has previously attempted to break into the film industry. The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner, which was shot from June 4 to August 12, 1961, but released in some locations in 1964, included him as an extra. Not even credit was given to him. The director, Tony Richardson, turned down Edward for a larger role on July 10, 1961, claiming he was too upscale for the role. That was painful. Edward didn't suit the working-class tone of the movie because he attended the prestigious Harrow School. However, he changed rather than gave up. He started learning how to act methodically. Starting August 15, he shed 12 pounds to appear tougher by following actual runners and workers. He added a sentence that wasn't in the script while filming on September 3. He was yelled at by Richardson to stay with the extras. When the movie came out on September 27, 1962, Edward was reminded of what it was like to be excluded. He continued to have that anguish until 1965. He was paid only $50 for the small role. Edward eventually landed a real TV role in 1967. On October 18, he starred in the Wednesday play in an episode titled The Order. He portrayed a soldier who was concealing his sexual orientation. Motivated by actual scandals, such as the Vassal case in 1962. 3 months after homosexuality was decriminalized in Britain on July 27, the episode aired. The audience was taken aback. More than 1,200 complaints had been received by October 20. He was even threatened by several letters. On October 22, one stated he ought to be injured. Beginning on September 5, he met with activists in Soho for weeks in order to prepare. His own family got into a heated argument about the role. Some family members severed their relationship with him on November 1. However, 8 million people watched the show. On October 15, censors removed 3 minutes of scenes. Edward continued to experience anxiety attacks until the next year, despite the success. Nevertheless, he had 15 additional proposals by December. Edward was given a small part in Oh, What a Lovely War in 1969. Filming for the role of a military assistant began at Brighton Pier on January 6. He and director Richard Attenborough got into a furious dispute on February 20. Stronger anti-war lines were what Edward desired. Filming paused for 4 hours as they yelled at one another. He nearly lost his job. The director gave in on February 22, but tensions persisted. Edward's career suffered until they reached an agreement in 1977. Edward participated in the Battle of Britain later that year. It was released on September 15, 1969. He portrayed Archie, a pilot. Filming took place at Duxford from April 1 to July 20. Douglas Bader, one of the men he met, had lost 23 friends in the 1940 air combat. He heard someone inform them that one of the 103 RAF pilots had been killed in a matter of months during a presentation on June 10. Edward began to have nightmares. There were at least 3 evenings a week when he would wake up screaming. Filming was so bogged down by bad weather that his contract was extended from 6 weeks to 11 months. The go-between changed Edward's life in 1971. He portrayed the scarred aristocrat Viscount Trimingham. Filmed in Norfolk, the movie was based on a 1953 novel. It won the Palme d'Or at its Cannes debut on May 13. The BAFTA went to Edward. March 23, 1972, for Best Supporting Actor. Off-camera, however, there was turmoil. In July 1970, rumors of a covert affair between Edward and his co-star Julie Christie started to circulate in tabloids. Married to Tracy Reed since 1958, she was 30 and he was 34. In between takes, they said, the two were kissing. The gossip appeared on more than 15 front pages. In an interview with the BBC on August 5, Edward denied it. However, the rumors created issues. Then, in 1973, came the Day of the Jackal. Edward portrayed a heartless killer. He met actual former mercenaries in Paris and practiced with a custom .22 rifle for 60 hours beginning in August 1972 in order to get ready. MI5 began observing him because it was so realistic. Concerned that he was learning too much about actual terror techniques, they went to the set in Vienna on September 15. He received a letter at home in London on October 3. It contained a message and a bullet. Either join the targets or stop digging. It came from Marseille. Filming halted for 2 days after police discovered it was the work of a fired extra. The cost of that delay was $45,000. The movie was released on May 16, 1973. It made $16 million and cost $8 million to produce. 3 countries were used for the 120-day filming of Edward's parts. He even managed to assemble the sniper weapon in less than 90 seconds. In the 1978 film Edward and Mrs. Simpson, Edward portrayed King Edward VIII. It demonstrated Wallace Simpson's affection for the king and his choice to abdicate the monarchy on December 10, 1936. The program ran between November 8 and December 20. Royalists, however, were incensed. 200 demonstrators yelled traitors to the crown when they arrived at Elstree Studios on October 15. 1,500 letters were written by the Monarchist League requesting that the concert be cancelled. 5 persons were arrested on October 17. The 3-day stoppage in filming cost $20,000. Even a letter telling Edward to stop acting was sent to him. Still, 12 million people watched each show. On December 5, Parliament even debated it. Critics claimed that details such as Edward's connections to the Nazis were omitted from the script. In an interview, Edward defended it by stating that he finally portrayed Dr. Hendricks in The Cat and the Canary in 1979. In Pirbright, filming took place from March 5 to June 20. There was a lot of turmoil on set. The script caused conflict between co-stars Olivia Hussey and Honor Blackman. After Hussey left the site on May 15, filming ceased for a week. Costs increased from $750,000 to $1.1 million, with overtime alone accounting for $80,000 of the total. Edward took over. He helped resolve the matter by meeting with both actresses for 3 hours at his hotel on May 22. They could help shape the scenes, he said. Things were back on track by May 25. On November 1, the film was released and made $2.5 million. Hussey didn't appreciate that one scenario had lesbian overtones, which contributed to the altercation. She insisted on 10 revisions. Edward later claimed that by using a Shakespearean quotation, he rescued the movie. Edward Fox assumed one of his most contentious jobs in 1982. In the movie Gandhi, he portrayed General Reginald Dyer. The actual British officer who ordered the shooting at a peaceful Amritsar crowd was Dyer. About 15,000 unarmed people were confined inside a walled courtyard on April 13, 1919. Without warning, Dyer gave the command for his soldiers to shoot. Officially, 1,200 people were injured and 379 people died. But more than 1,000 people were slain, according to Indian records. Fox portrayed the character with such icy intensity that it gave me goosebumps when he shouted, "Fire," on screen. In addition to earning him a 1983 BAFTA nomination, the performance had horrifying repercussions. 12 death threats were sent to Fox in January 1983 when he was in London promoting the movie. He was referred to as the devil in certain letters. "Dyer's ghost will haunt you," one even said. For 10 nights, Fox was forced to sleep with a security guard outside his hotel room. It was a genuine worry. Nevertheless, the film earned $127 million worldwide and took home 8 Oscars. Despite the fact that it endangered his life, Fox subsequently stated that it was his most significant role. Fox co-starred with Albert Finney in the 1983 film The Dresser, which was released in 1984. He portrayed Norman, a devoted assistant to an elderly performer in London during the bombing days of World War II. The craziness of theater life was depicted in the movie, including 17 tense practice and breakdown sequences. However, things went too far during a live rehearsal in February 1983. For 15 minutes in a row, Finney remained true to his role and yelled obscenities at Fox. He referred to him as weak, sad, and useless. Fox started crying. 2 days were spent off from filming. Later, Finney claimed that he was unable to control his method acting. Fox claimed that he kept quiet to preserve the moment. However, he had to attend therapy following the shoot. Nevertheless, the movie was a success. It received 5 Oscar nominations and made $5.3 million. It felt painfully true on screen, according to the New York Times, and critics praised the two performers' strong chemistry. Edward Fox made his Broadway comeback on March 15, 1986, with a production of The Philanthropist. He portrayed Philip, a reserved professor who was surrounded by rowdy, boisterous buddies. With 25,000 spectators, the performance earned $1.2 million at the Ethel Barrymore Theatre. However, something startling occurred during one of the dinner sequences on April 2. In the midst of a speech, his trousers tore open. All of it was seen by about 1,000 individuals. The theater froze for 10 complete seconds. Fox swiftly composed a line, left the stage and continued the performance. The story was carried by tabloids the following day. Fox's Foxy Flub was the headline in the New York Post. Producers considered canceling the performance after ticket sales fell 20% in the first week. Fox, however, kept it alive. In interviews, he made light of it by joking that "my dignity took the hit, but the show must go on." The buzz was beneficial. After that, attendance increased by 15%. It even appeared in an SNL sketch years later. What began as humiliation evolved into a legendary aspect of theater. Edward Fox also became a part of the James Bond franchise in 1983, when he played M in Never Say Never Again. Since it wasn't included in the standard Aeon series, it was a unique Bond movie. When the film was released on October 7, Sean Connery returned as Bond, and it brought in $160 million worldwide. Connery's Bond appeared in 9 scenes with Fox, all of which were severe and solemn. However, tensions simmered behind the scenes. During a day of filming on April 12, director Irvin Kershner made adjustments that tended to Connery's vision. It did not sit well with Fox. On April 15, 3 days later, he stormed off the set. Before leaving, he yelled, "I'm not a puppet," in front of the crew. It cost almost $200,000 to halt filming for 2 days. He needed to be calmed by Connery himself. They spoke in private. And Fox came back. Later, he blamed the grueling 14-hour days for what he called his worst experience on a movie set. Despite the issues, the picture made $20 million more than the competing Bond movie Octopussy. Although the walkout continued to be a part of the tale, Fox's portrayal of M became famous. Fox played a British officer in Return from the River Kwai at the beginning of 1989. The film was shot in Thailand's dense forests between January 15 and May 20 and tells the story of Allied POWs who built the Thai-Burma Railway during World War II. From 1942 to 1943, more than 12,000 prisoners of war had lost their lives constructing that railway. Despite his best efforts, Fox suffered from severe malaria after being bitten by mosquitoes on March 10 while filming a nighttime scene in Kanchanaburi. He reached a temperature of 104 degrees Celsius. He had to stay for 18 days after being taken to a hospital in Bangkok. He shed 15 pounds. The production lost $1.2 million as a result of the 5-week shooting delay. In an interview later in 1990, Fox stated, "I thought death was near." During his sickness, he experienced horrific visions, but the suffering gave his performance a tremendous element. Despite only making $4.5 million, the film went on to win a BAFTA for sound. According to some, his acting was haunted in a way that was agonizingly true. Fox played Prince John in the British adaptation of Robin Hood, which debuted on May 13, 1991. Robin, played by Patrick Bergin, had a harsher tone than the Kevin Costner version, which came out on June 14, a month later, and earned $390 million. Although Fox's version only had a $15 million budget, things became complicated behind the scenes. Everything was delayed because producer John McTiernan wanted reshoots for historical accuracy. People thought Fox's portrayal of Prince John was a little too harsh during test viewing. 12 minutes of his scenes were removed from the 104-minute finished film. According to Fox, he based his acting on actual royal scandals, such as the 1215 Magna Carta treachery. However, his role was overshadowed by the success of the other version. Nevertheless, after years of playing serious drama parts, it was an opportunity for Fox to attempt something different. Fox made an appearance in the 1996 television film September, which debuted on December 8. He portrayed Archie, a man in the Scottish Highlands who finds himself in a difficult love triangle. The suicide plot, in which Jacqueline Bissett's character Pandora kills herself after disclosing she has terminal cancer, was the most startling aspect. A letter written by her character revealed the twist. In a subsequent interview in November 1996, Fox stated that this story was personal to him. In 1951, his parents separated while he was only 14 years old. And it was messy, full of anguish and betrayal. James, his younger brother, was only 12. That was a memory from his early years. There was discussion during production on the appropriate level of graphic content for the suicide scene. Parts were ultimately red-hot, and the final release was postponed by 3 months. 4.2 million people watched it when it aired. The rawness and passion of it left many in a state of shock. Later, Fox claimed that the part helped him comprehend the tragedy in his own family. Fox made a comeback to the big screen in The Importance of Being Earnest in 2002. He played a shrewd butler named Lane in the May 17 release, which was a slight homage to his early playing career. However, things weren't always easy. Before filming began in April 2001, Fox claimed to have a lengthy and illustrious career, including a BAFTA victory, and wanted payment of $500,000. Miramax, the producers, disagreed. Filming was postponed by 6 weeks while negotiations continued for weeks. Fox ultimately received $350,000 in addition to a portion of the earnings. However, the $15 million movie only brought in $18 million globally. Fox's performance was praised by critics, who noted that it had the witty humor of Oscar Wilde. However, the drama behind the scenes piqued fans' attention more. In an interview afterward, Fox joked that it was all serious business. Fox portrayed Lord Kilwillie, a colorful character, in the BBC series Monarch of the Glen from 2000 to 2005. Over the course of 7 seasons, he made 24 appearances. The program explored the lives of people living on a Scottish estate. Things became contentious in season 3. Shortly after the death of her husband Hector, Molly became a widow and was asked to marry Kilwillie. The fans were incensed. More than 1,500 messages expressing disapproval of the story were addressed to the BBC in March 2002. the script was swiftly toned down by the writers. To remedy it, production even took a 2-week break. Fox justified the storyline by claiming that his own experiences served as inspiration. He was married in 1973, when there was a lot of family strife. 7 million people watched the show on average. It saw a 15% increase in ratings as a result of the incident. Additionally, it helped Fox establish himself as a television mainstay, remaining with the program until its conclusion on October 23, 2005. A unique event occurred in British theatre in 2010. Sand in the Sandwiches, a one-man performance, started touring the United Kingdom. It focused on the life of John Betjeman, a poet. The lone actor on stage was Edward Fox. Every night, they performed for about 2 hours. He was also not a young man at the time. Despite the fact that he was already in his 70s, he persisted. He put his all into delivering poems and sharing anecdotes from Betjeman's life every night. It didn't matter that he didn't strive to resemble the heavy-set, bald Betjeman. The way Fox portrayed the poet's spirit, the tenderness, the charm, and the melancholy that made Betjeman unique was what counted. The town clerk's views and Miss Joan Hunter Dunn were his favorites. He claimed that Betjeman's ability to speak straight to people's hearts made him unique. Because of its popularity, the performance had a rare week-long engagement at the Theatre Royal Haymarket in 2017. That was significant for a non-musical. Edward Fox joins the Doctor Who audio drama series in 2013, 3 years after the show's premiere. Things were complicated when they should have gone smoothly. The BBC had begun to take action against content created by fans. Those who had produced radio dramas without government authorization were being threatened with legal action. Despite being caught in the midst of a larger tempest, Edward was not personally involved in any lawsuits. It was viewed as unjust by some. They noted that the BBC honored other unofficial efforts even as it pursued modest fan projects, such as Mission to the Unknown, a 2019 student-led reenactment. Fans were perplexed. Although Edward didn't talk about it much, it was obvious that the Doctor Who community was going through an odd and stressful period. Edward resorted to something quite sentimental in 2015. He collaborated on Elegy, Rachmaninoff, and A Heart in Exile with pianist Lucy Parham. Sergei Rachmaninoff, a Russian composer, was the subject of the story, who never really came home after leaving his house in 1917. As Parham played eerie piano pieces by Rachmaninoff, Edward read letters and journal entries. They came together to make something strong and silent. Moments musico, etudes tableaux, and preludes were among the musical selections. There were also compositions by Tchaikovsky and Scriabin. They recorded it after performing it live at St. John Smith Square. Many individuals who might not have understood the suffering behind Rachmaninoff's music until they heard Edward's voice were reached by the tour. Edward accomplished something quite uncommon in 2018. He appeared on stage alongside his real-life son, Freddie Fox, in Oscar Wilde's An Ideal Husband. Edward was 81. Freddie was 39 years old. In the play, they also played father and son. There was an electrifying dynamic. Edward was the Earl of Caversham, and he was strict. Freddie portrayed Lord Goring, a light-hearted youth with a secret wisdom. Their chemistry was adored by the audience. "Do you really always understand what you say, sir?" Edward said. The theater burst out laughing as Freddie said, "Yes, father, if I listen carefully." It was physically taxing for both of them to perform 8 times a week, but their relationship made it unique. Edward participated in the Poetry Hour in 2019. For him, these public poetry readings served as a means of defending a passion: British poetry, cultural memory, and traditional beliefs. Laurence Fox, his nephew, was in the news at the time for criticizing cancel culture. Laurence even labeled cultural elites woke commissars and founded a political party. Edward avoided talking openly about politics. He decided on poetry instead. He felt that one should only do what was meaningful. Actors shouldn't play every part, as he once stated. They ought to do an action that genuinely adds value. However, Edward's private life has also garnered interest. He married actress Tracy Reed in 1958, when he was just becoming started. She was just 17. By 1961, their marriage was over, although they stayed lifelong friends. According to Tracy, they never stopped caring even though their marriage was doomed from the beginning. Lucy Arabella Fox, their only child, rose to become the Viscountess Gormanston. Tracy later got married 3 more times and starred in Dr. Strangelove. At the age of 70, she died of liver cancer in 2012. Joanna David has been Edward's most enduring partner. In 1971, they started dating each other. Freddie and Amelia were their 2 children. However, they were together for 33 years before getting married in July 2004. Experienced severe health issues, which included brain surgery in 1993. Later, she donated to cancer and brain charities. Freddie followed them into acting after their daughter Amelia rose to fame through Silent Witness. The Fox family name hasn't always been a source of admiration either. Edward's nephew Laurence Fox lost a significant libel case in January 2024. After making false online accusations against 2 individuals who were pedophiles, he was sentenced to pay $180,000. A drag artist who was one of the men claimed that the outcry was too great. The court ruled that Lawrence's remarks were unfounded and hurtful. Later that year, he challenged the ruling on 5 grounds, but the harm had already been done. The entire Fox family received unwelcome attention as a result of the tragedy. Edward himself made headlines in 2021. He expressed skepticism regarding lockdowns and COVID-19 vaccinations. Healthy people shouldn't be made to live in seclusion, in his opinion. It was an unexpected move for someone who had largely avoided politics. But given Lawrence's opinions, it wasn't entirely shocking. Nevertheless, a lot of people were let down. The majority of British actors at the time supported vaccines. It felt like Edward was speaking out of step. Edward, who is now 88, then spearheaded a demonstration in Wareham in 2025. The goal was to preserve a basic railway crossing that handled 860 passengers every day. Many were disabled or old. It was to be replaced by an expensive ramp system that was incompatible with wheelchairs and strollers, according to the authorities. At 11 a.m., Edward appeared in person. On February 1st and joined MP Vicky Slade in standing. His notoriety contributed to media coverage. And more than 2,500 people signed the petition. He used the Equality Act to support his claims when he challenged officials about discrimination. An evening with the Fox family was held at the Purbeck Film Festival on October 18 of the same year. Edward made an admission during the occasion that very few performers ever make aloud. He discussed nepotism. Having a well-known family name opened doors, he remarked. Younger family members were able to secure parts that would otherwise be difficult for others thanks to his brother, Robert Fox's production work, and his own legacy. He did not refute it. He actually stated it quite clearly. Recognition of family names is important. That year, Edward disclosed considerably more in an interview. Due to what he referred to as woke changes in the scripts, he has declined big-budget film offers. The characters, in his opinion, were no longer authentic to the original narrative. He had no desire to participate in that. Although he could afford to decline, he believed that elder actors were under pressure to take on parts that advanced contemporary goals. Additionally, he called cancel culture foolish and inhuman. There were also persistent rumors regarding his health. Social media said he had passed away in 2025. Although it quickly spread, Edward had to declare that he was still alive and well. He attributed his less public appearances to the untrue reports, as well as the disputes surrounding Laurence. He claimed that scams of this nature have become all too prevalent, particularly among elderly performers who are not active on social media. Having to confront lies was annoying for him, but the quiet just served to amplify them. Edward Fox has remained true to his values despite everything: poetry, politics, protests, and suffering. Even at the age of 88, he continues to pick his roles wisely, voice his opinions when he feels that something is amiss, and serve as a reminder that living a long life in the spotlight does not imply that you lose sight of reality.